Hi, everyone. Can you see me? All right. I'm not sure if anyone can see me. Can you give me a message if you can? Yes. Okay. All right. That sounds good. Um, all right. So, hi, everyone. I know it's been a um, pretty crazy couple weeks and months in immigration so far. And it's it's a lot of changes that have been coming about, and um, it's kind of hard to keep track, especially as we're nearing the end of the year, and the PRs are going through. Um, so what we'll do today, I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys a little bit, seeing where everyone's from, and essentially answering any questions that I possibly can. So that'll be great for us. I'm also going to reserve a couple of minutes just to talk about a couple new programs that have come up. Like I said, I mean, it's honestly been a confusing time with immigration. So um, hopefully we can go through some new changes and developments that have been happening. Okay, just so I get an idea, I mean, where are most of our viewers from? I can see it in the chat. You guys are commenting a little bit, and it's nice to chat with you today. But just so I know, and it'll help me kind of gear a little bit as to what we're going to be chatting about and how I can best help you. Um, we have most of our viewers that come are from Canada, or South Asia, as well as the United States. So okay, that's good to know. It seems like that generally seems to be the gist. So what we'll do today, you guys, I mean, if you've joined this live before, you kind of know how it works. We have this chat on the side. If you put your questions in there, then I'll do my best to get through them, and just try to answer them throughout the hour. So that'll be fine. And then anything else that we'll talk about, hopefully I'll try to get through everything at the end. Okay. All right. Oh, I see. We have a few from South America, South Asia, US, as expected. All right, that's great. Okay. All right. So we're at about 80 people. So I guess I'll start a little bit giving you guys a bit of introduction about myself. And while I introduce myself, maybe you can go ahead and write a couple questions you have. And I'll go through them as soon as there's a few breaks in between. So I'm one of the supervising lawyers at Visa Place. We're based in Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. And what myself and my team specializes in is particularly, I like to think of it more legal heavy types of applications. But what our firm does as a whole is we can essentially help you with almost all aspects of immigration. So whether it may be an economic question, a work permit question, a family sponsorship question, we'll be able to go through those. Okay. So we are, like I said, we are based in Toronto, Ontario. So this is a Canadian law firm, but we do also have a US side where we have US lawyers as well. So if you have any questions at the end of this that are more about immigrating to the United States, feel free to send us an email, call our reception, our intake, and we'd be happy to help you with it. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's start with a couple questions. So let's start with the first question that I can see is what is working for family sponsorship for conjugal partners? This is a great question, largely because conjugal sponsorship is not commonly used, it's not commonly known, and it is a little bit legally difficult when it comes to knowing if you're eligible for a conjugal and if you're able to submit one. So conjugal relationship does require you to be in a relationship with this person for about 1 year at a minimum. And it does require you to have seen this person in real life. If you haven't, then there needs to be some sort of reason why you can't. But I want to give an example of what a conjugal relationship looks like. It's essentially for people who want to do spousal sponsorship, but cannot actually get a marriage certificate and cannot fall under common law. So, for example, if you are someone who can't get a visa, let's say you're a Cuban citizen, and you can't get a visa to go to Canada, and similarly, for some reason, the Canadian citizen is not able to travel outside of Canada. Maybe they have a health concern. Maybe they, have the inability to fly. So at that point, you would potentially look at a conjugal relationship because you might want to get married. You can't get married due to some barriers, and you have to show that you really tried to. And then a conjugal relationship would work in that regard. So that's one type of spousal sponsor. It falls under a spousal sponsorship, but it's really a family class sponsorship. And it conjugal cannot be for someone that has just kind of know someone on the internet and you're not married yet, but you want to sponsor them. It doesn't work that simply. You do need to show that you would have a marriage sponsorship if it were not for these barriers. Okay. And I have another question there about spousal sponsorship from Rob about the question is it better if I go to Ghana to marry, then come back to Canada to start, and then come back to Canada to start the application? So while we're on sponsorship, I just want to talk about that a little bit. It's a great question. And I think it's something that most people are dealing with right now. When you submit a spousal sponsorship, you can do it from inside of Canada or you can do it from outside of Canada. So one thing people grapple with is that inside of Canada sponsorships right now are actually about 6 to 8 months. Immigration Canada has put it that it's about a year, over a year, and that's just not the case. It is closer to 6 to 8 months right now. So clients will really like to get their sponsorship from inside of Canada and first apply for a visitor visa. This is certainly possible. You would be able to get married. Let's say, Rob, for your scenario, let's say you go to Ghana, you get married, but you don't want to submit an outside of Canada sponsorship. You want to do it inside of Canada. So you're going to apply for a TRV for your spouse. And then under the grounds of dual intent, you would be able to apply for sponsorship inside once they get their visa approved and are inside the country. It is a very complicated and not straightforward process to do that. And I really mean it, because when you're doing something like that, you essentially can do two things. Either you can, argue with immigration that your partner is going to be a genuine temporary visitor, and that visitor, who's your wife, is going to go back to their country. It's hard to prove that. So the other argument or other approach you can do is lean into something called dual intent. And dual intent essentially leans into the genuineness of the intent to come to Canada, which is that I'm coming, I'm going to be a true visitor, but I'm simultaneously going to be applying for PR. So you can do that as option number one. But option number two is to just submit the outside of Canada sponsorship. The reason why I would still consider it is because the TRV you're going to apply for, like I said, it's high risk. So if you're not able to get the TRV approved, you're just losing more and more time. So if you can go ahead and apply for an outside of Canada sponsorship, you want to do something that's a bit straightforward. I recommend it in certain cases. I recommend it in cases where your TRV might not be approved and has a high chance of refusal, or I recommend it in cases where the consulate office you're applying from doesn't have such a high processing time. So if your partner is in Ghana, the Accra office, incredibly slow. If you're going to do an outside of Canada sponsorship from Accra, you're looking at 2 years. If you plan on applying from India, the New Delhi office, very, very slow. You're looking at also about maybe 1.5 years to 2 years. So it really does depend. If you're in the States and you want to apply from States to Canada, it's a great option. I would recommend doing that because the States consulate currently has a 12-month processing time, which is great. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next question. I hope I answered that for you. All right. Someone said, can you apply online? We don't fit into any of the programs online. Is there a way to mail in an app instead? It's a little bit general. I don't really know exactly what you mean by applying online. If you can just follow up with that, because that would be helpful if you can just let me know exactly. But just to let you know, as of September 30th, all Canadian PR applications must be done online. Temporary applications are encouraged to be online, but you can always mail in your application if you have a form of disability or if there's any other reason why you potentially can't do it online. Okay. All right. Okay, so I have another one. Hi, I'm in Calgary. I just want to see if we can sponsor our relative in the Philippines. We're trying to help my niece to come to Canada. It's a good question. A lot of people are looking to sponsor someone who's not necessarily their child, their spouse, or their parent. So there is a program called Other Family Sponsorship. Other Family Sponsorship is also known as Lonely Family Sponsorship. And um, essentially what it is, it's quite difficult, but essentially what it is that if you are inside of Canada and you are alone, let's say you are the Canadian citizen, you're alone inside of Canada, then you can apply to sponsor someone who is not a spouse, a child, a parent, like the generic sponsorship routes. Okay. So if you do that, you have to be what's called alone in Canada. You are the lonely family member inside of Canada. So you can sponsor them as long as you don't have any other family members inside of Canada. And then there is, a list of other requirements. I'm not going to go into details, but the program is Lonely Family Sponsorship. And then you go from there. Okay. In terms of other ways to bring family members over, if you're looking at someone who's a niece, I mean, I'm just going to assume she's young, then there is, you can look at study permits, you can look at work permits, and that would probably be a good way to go about it. Okay. All right, let me go through these questions. All right. So next we have, how can I get, oh, I answered that one already. Can we retire to Canada if we pay our own health insurance? It's not an immigration related question, so I won't be able to answer that. Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is, can we become PRs in Canada, or can we live in Canada if we're not, using the social services? The short answer is not really. Canada is not just looking at that when you try to come in. You'd probably want to look at, if you're a visitor and you want to stay here permanently, you can't stay for more than 6 months, and your intention does have to be temporary. So that is, if you want to clarify it, I'd be happy to go through it. Just make sure it's more immigration related, because I won't be able to help if it is outside of that scope. Do I answer any TN visa related questions? It depends. Let me know what the question is, and I'll see if I can get to it. Again, another question. The questions are a little bit generic. If you want to make them a bit more detailed, that'll be more helpful for me. For example, my question is, what is the procedure of immigration? Depends what type of immigration. If we don't have any sponsorship from Canada, can we apply online? So again, it really is hard to say. What program are you looking at coming at? There are a plethora of different options you can do. And if you don't have a sponsorship option, I'm assuming you mean for working. You can look at study permit, you can look at visit visa, and when you're inside of Canada, apply for a work permit. You can look at express entry if you wanted to, anything like that. Okay. All right, next question. This is an excellent question. Can my spouse or common law partner use real estate as a proof of funds, even if it is a form of inheritance to me in the future, meaning the title is not yet named to me? It's a really good question. For proof of funds, let's say you're talking about spousal sponsorship, it could work. And if you're looking at temporary application, it could work. So the short answer is yes, but you do need to provide a letter of explanation. And I would highly recommend including additional proof of funds. So something like tax documents, something like a lawyer's letter talking about inheritance, maybe something that shows your T4 from the year before, anything else that can add on or supplement to the form of inheritance. But the issue with it is that the title is not yet in your name, but it still will count as a proof of fund. So that's why I'm saying yes, but yes, it will count. Just include more information on it. You'll probably need some more supporting documentation, whether that's a PR or temporary. Okay. Next question is a great question I ask myself all the time, which is why doesn't Canada have a K1 visa like the US? Excellent question. I think K1 visas in the United States, for anyone who doesn't know, is essentially the fiance visa. I think it's an amazing program. I would love for Canada to have it. We don't have it right now because visitor visas and visitor records, so let's say you're a US citizen trying to come to Canada, are a bit more lenient than they are in the States. So the need for it isn't the same as it is in the United States, which is a bit more stringent. But a K1 visa would be an excellent option. And I sincerely hope Canada has it in the future because it's a great program. Okay. So next question is, can you explain to me how I can get a work permit and live and work in Canada? This person is from Accra, Ghana. So in terms of getting a work permit inside of Canada, it would be a good option to first try to find an employer. So somebody who's going to be able to sponsor you in a high skilled position. That's always the best way. And then in terms of living in Canada, I mean, that's all the same. Once you get your work permit, it's going to work in two stages, most likely, which is an LMIA from a job offer. And then afterwards, you're going to apply for the work permit. So that's one of the most common ways you would get a work permit inside of Canada. I really recommend finding a job offer. It's a lot easier said than done because everyone knows how difficult it is to just try to find a job in a different country. But that's the most straightforward way. The other methods that people have used when they can't get a job offer and they still are relatively young is that they'll come to Canada as students. So they come as students in case there's something they want to learn about, and they go into programs that will enable them to apply for a postgraduate work permit afterwards. So let's say you apply to University of Toronto and you study for 1 year in a master's program. When your master's program is done, then you're eligible for a 2-year work permit. It's an open work permit. So if education is something that you're interested in, then I would perhaps suggest looking at a study permit where you're able to combine both studying in Canada and eventually working in Canada. So it's a great option for somebody if that's in the scope. But if it's not, then I would probably look at a job offer as the easiest option. Okay. All right. The next question that I see is I had a PR and had to renounce since I was unable to comply with the 6-month per year stay requirement to take care of my sick parents in the Philippines. They have since passed away, so I would now like to know if I can reapply for PR, which I renounced in 2018. Another great question. Thank you for the details on this one. The answer is yes. You're absolutely allowed to apply for PR again after you renounce it. What I always recommend is that you put an explanation as to why you're reapplying for PR. So just to be clear, though, once you do renounce your PR, when you're saying that you want to get it back or reapply for PR, I want to clarify that you can't just say, hey, I want to unrenounce my PR. You can't go back and claim the one that you had before. You have to apply for PR all over again. So let's say you apply for a skilled worker through Express Entry and you get a PR invitation. You can go through that whole process of applying again. You just need to include an explanation letter as to why you couldn't stick with your requirement and why this time you can. So very simple explanation. I had to leave to take care of my parents. My parents have since passed away, and now I'm able to fully be in Canada. Okay. Now, in this scenario, because it happens a lot, if hypothetically you didn't actually renounce your PR and you were someone who had held onto your PR card had expired, and you haven't been back, you haven't fulfilled the residency, there's still an option for you to keep your PR. And the clarification that I want to make is that when you become a PR, you have a PR status and you have a PR card. Your PR status does not go away just because your PR card expired. Your PR card is a travel document, which means that if your PR card expires, you're still PR status. A similar way I can describe it is, and they don't hold the same weight, so don't take this literally, but the easiest way to describe it is that if you are a citizen of Canada, then you're still a citizen of Canada, even though your passport expired. Your passport was just for traveling, but your status remains the same. So similarly to a PR, if your PR card expires, it doesn't mean you're no longer a PR. It just means you can't hop on a plane and come to Canada anymore. So in this hypothetical, for the person who posed it, just in case you didn't actually renounce it and you just mean your PR card is expired, then there's still ways for you to hold on to that PR. The most common way is a PR renewal on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. So if that's your scenario, let me know, and maybe you can contact our office afterwards, and I can talk to you a little bit more about that in detail. Okay. All right. The next question I see is, if you were asked to leave Canada, but immigration paid you, how do I get back? Paid you way out. How do I get back to Canada? Okay, I think this means if you had a removal order or an exclusion order, or deportation order, and then Canadian Border Services had paid for your travel. So in order for you to come back to Canada, it is imperative that you paid those fees that Canada Border Services had paid to get you to hop on a plane or whatever it might be. That was your form of transportation. You do need to pay it before you can come back. The details on how you can pay it, I believe you just need to get in contact with Canada Border Services through email, and they'll be able to get that sorted. So once you're able to do it, you can come back to Canada. It depends what kind of removal or any form of order you had. So, it could be either 1 year, it could be, 1 year has passed since then. I don't know. It could be a multitude of different ways. It really depends on the grounds in which you were asked to be removed. Okay. All right. Next question is, I'm 42 years old. Do I still have a chance to immigrate as project manager with 18 years of experience? Absolutely. That's a short answer. So there are lots of options that you can do. It depends a little bit as well as to where you're from. So first off, just because you're 42, it doesn't mean express entry is not an option for you. It just means that you lost a little bit of points in one category, one of many categories. At the same time, someone who is, younger in age doesn't have 18 years of professional experience. So it's something you would probably compensate for with your work experience, maybe your education, maybe your language skills. So just so you know, express entry is not off the table just because, you'd be over 40. You would also be able to look at a couple things that come to mind. One is a PNP option for you. So the best thing about PNP is that it will give you that influx of 200 points if you do get a PNP call. And it will be required that you have a job offer in most provinces. So provinces like Saskatchewan and Manitoba don't require job offers, and they still have a PNP program. So if you go through PNP on a skilled worker and you're over 40, you will have a higher point total, CRS points, as well as assessment factors is what it's called, which is that score out of 60 or 61 or 67. The other option, if you are over 40 and you have a high skilled position that you've been working in quite a few years, you can take a look at things like intra-company transfers. You can take a look at LMIAs, getting a job offer inside of Canada. And an intra-company transfer essentially means, let's say you're hypothetically in the States and you work for a company like Deloitte and you're a project manager. Then you would be able to come to Canada and work in the Canadian office for maybe 1 or 3 years as a manager and come as a work permit holder. So there's a couple options for you, but essentially a short answer is you absolutely have a chance. I just recommend situations like that. It's always important to know what your weaknesses are so that you can kind of double down on finding the stuff that's really going to get you through the door. Okay. All right. Next, I just want to apply for a work visa. Is it possible? I'm from Haiti, and I know Haitians are all out of international programs. Is Haiti in this program? The reality is, just to get, I guess, a bit personal, is that Haiti has been in a difficult situation. And for some reason, Immigration Canada has not put any programs forward to help Haitians. And that's the sad reality of it. It doesn't mean that doors are closed to you, but it does mean that you need to know that Immigration Canada will have a slightly higher refusal rate for Haitians than, let's say, if you were coming from the United States, obviously. It's largely because if you come for something like a work visa, which is a temporary visa, then they think that you won't go back to your country just because Haiti is not going through the best socioeconomic or safety situation right now. So what that means is that you're absolutely eligible to apply for things like work visas, LMIAs, and study permits, anything else. I've seen approvals. It's not that it's not possible, but there is no specific program to help Haitians at the time, even though there should be. And there also is a slightly higher refusal rate for you to be aware of. So what that means is that if you do have a work opportunity in Canada, make sure it's going to be as strong as possible. Make sure it makes sense. If you're, a teacher in Haiti, don't get a job offer in Canada. That's an accounting position. It doesn't make sense, and you're only making your application weaker. Okay. Next question is, how do you change your status from visitor to worker? Quite easily. You just essentially need to get a job offer. It's a temporary public policy that's been in place sometime during COVID. So once you have a job offer, then that's when the option to apply and change your status to a worker will kick in. Okay. Do you need a visitor visa if you have a US passport? No. You don't need an ETA. You don't need anything. You can just fly on your US passport through the airplane, and also through land border. Okay. I have a couple questions. Me and my partner are applying to common law sponsorship. On one page, we are unable to sign it on the computer and we can't print it out. What do we do? I also want to know where I send the common law sponsorship application. Very detailed. I appreciate it. I can answer this for you. So in terms of the common law application, just so you know, it has to go online. So if you are struggling as to where to send it, I highly recommend typing on Google instruction guide, common law sponsorship, IRCC. You'll find everything you need there. It's an instruction guide. It'll show you the exact link of the PR portal. And the PR portal is where you're going to be submitting the application. It must be done online. It cannot be done by mail unless you have a disability. Okay. In terms of where to sign, it depends. It says on one page we're unable to sign it on the computer. We can't print it out. The reality is, I mean, who has printers at home anymore? But I recommend going to Staples or whatever you can do, Staples, Walmart, wherever has a printing center, get it printed and sign it. Immigration Canada does not make exceptions to not signing something. Your application will be returned if you're missing a signature or did not sign it properly. But again, when it comes to signatures, make sure you're going on instruction guide, IRCC, common law sponsorship, and you'll see the instructions for how everything should be signed. I also want to recommend on the document checklist for common law sponsorship, on the last page, you will see some things on signing. So take a look at those kinds of references, okay? All right, okay. Please tell me about PR requirements. I would love to, but this is a little bit too general. So tell me what exactly you're looking for PR requirements. There is so many different options. So you have sponsorship, you have skilled worker, whatever it could be. So give me a bit more background on that question. I'd be happy to answer it. Okay, so the next one is, I'm in Nicaragua. I'd like to travel to Canada. Can I apply for a visa in Nicaragua to be able to travel? Do I need a visa, or what can I do to travel over there? Good question. The short answer is yes. What you're going to be doing is you have to apply for something called the TRV, temporary resident visa. And just in general, for anybody else, if you're curious about do I need a visa to come to Canada, it's a quick Google search you'll be able to find. Some people are visa exempt and just need ETAs. So things like the UK, if you're from the UK, you can fly in on an ETA. If you're from Italy, you can fly in on an ETA. But if you're not on a visa exempt list, then you need to apply for what's called a temporary resident visa. Okay. All right. Next is, I'm 35 years old. I'm from the Philippines. Can I apply for a holiday working visa? If not, what other options do I have? I don't believe there's a holiday working visa option for the Philippines, unfortunately. For the most part, holiday working visas are for more European countries. I don't, off the top of my head, don't hold me to this, but I don't think there are any Asian countries that are currently on the holiday working visa list. If not, what other options do I have? So in terms of work permits, and we'll take IAC and holiday working visas out of the consideration. One of the more common ones, like I said, LMIA. I know I've said that a couple of times, but really that is the fastest, easiest, most common way to come to Canada on a work permit. So an LMIA is essentially a employer-specific job offer. So if you have an employer in Canada who's willing to sponsor you for a specific job, then you would be able to do that. And that is one way to come as a worker. The second option, I'm going to reiterate the study option again. You're 35, you're still young. If you were interested in studying, then you can always obtain a postgraduate work permit after your studies. And then the third option I can think of is the home support worker program, which essentially you could come in as a home support worker. You could come in as a childcare worker. I believe for 2022 it is closed, but it's something to look at. It's a great program. So keep that on your list. Called home childcare support worker, home support worker, or childcare worker. Those are the two options. It's the same type of application, and it will be opening up in 2023. We're essentially 2 months from there, so take a look at it from now. And I really recommend being prepared for 2023 for this program, because it's gonna cap quite fast. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna scroll up through the chat. So pardon me for a little bit because I want to make sure I didn't miss any follow-ups or just general comments. I see a question here that I might have missed. It says, I'm Lebanese. How can I work with my wife in Canada? She has a master's degree and a wonderful resume. So if your wife is in Canada and she's currently studying, then she can sponsor you as a worker if you are married, and you would be able to apply for a open work permit application as a result. Okay. So if that's your scenario, then that would work. Okay. Next question is, how can I get a green card in Canada? So Canada doesn't have green cards. That's a US specific route. And what we have instead, which I think is the equivalent, is just permanent residency. So like I said, I mean, there's so many options. There's sponsorship, there's, working in Canada and then applying for skilled worker, there's getting a job offer and coming through on PNP, multiple different ways. Okay. If you guys are interested and a lot of the questions I can answer right now, I can answer more specific based questions. But if you're at the place where you don't know at all where to start, if you go on our website, visaplace.com, we have this, I guess it's like auto-generated mapping out of questions. And it'll ask you a couple questions about what you're looking for. And it'll give you some options as to what you might be eligible for. So if you go on our website, visaplace.com, look for that little start that will ask you, are you interested in emigrating to Canada? And then it'll show you and ask you a couple questions on how you might be eligible. It's a really, really good place to start. And then if you find that, let's say you go through that, the question and answer thing on our website, and it says, it looks like you might be eligible for sponsorship. Then at that point, you know where to go from there. So even if you don't want to work with a lawyer, that tool is excellent. So feel free to try to find that on our website. It's a good place to start if you're just kind of at a loss. Okay. Another good question is, my daughter is in Canada and is due to apply for PR. Can I apply for family sponsorship? Most likely not, unless you're doing a parental sponsorship. So if your daughter is over 18 or 22 and she's applying for PR, she can't do it before PR, and she can't include you on her PR application if she's over the age of a minor. But what you can do is she can potentially apply for your parental sponsorship if she financially meets the requirement and makes 3 years worth of income that meets the financial requirement. So to actually include you on her PR application, likely not, based off what I'm seeing in the question. But she would be eligible to apply for your parental sponsorship in the future if she qualifies. Okay, so I hope that Padmakar, I hope that answers your question. Sorry, guys. I know you asked a couple of these 10 minutes ago. I apologize. I hope you're all still here. Another really great question, and it's something I wanted to talk about a little bit, was the Afghan refugee sponsorship program. So how much time will it take for processing documents and interview of special programs to sponsor Afghan refugees? Great question. And the reality is we don't really know. If you're Afghan, and living in Canada, if you are part of an Afghan sponsorship application, you will know that the reality is it seems like Immigration Canada is not following through on the promises that they've kind of kept in terms of how quickly they're going to be processing applications. We did expect, I mean, when the program was first announced, I myself was hopeful that it was going to be 6 to 8 months, for example. Not the case. I think it's you're looking at about 12 months, even for special programs. So the issue is not the actual processing; it's just getting an application number. So for you, Mr. Rasik, if you're looking at a case where the application already has an application number, it's in process. I don't mean submitted, I mean in process. You have an application number, then it will go a lot faster. Maybe less than 6 months. But in terms of actually getting the application number, that is taking a very, very long time, unfortunately. Okay. What's the best way for U.S. citizens to retire in Canada? So I would say the best way for U.S. citizens to retire in Canada is to come as visitors for 6 months, which is what a lot of people do. But essentially what you would do is you'd come for 6 months, which is the max amount of time you can do as a temporary resident in Canada. And you can have a secondary home. You essentially have to deal with, foreign tax on land ownership. But that's something that a lot of people do. They like to be in Canada for the summers, not the winters, I understand. But they like to be here for about 6 months in the warmer months. And you can just do that as a visitor. That's not a problem. You essentially just need to show the border officer that you only stay for, no more than 6 months at a time, and that your main place of domicile is going to be in the United States. Now, if you want to retire full-time, there's no way to do that as a visitor unless you continuously extend your stay. I'm trying to think what else you can do. I mean, you're looking at retirement, so you're obviously not looking at working. If you have any sponsorship options, if you have kids in Canada who can sponsor you, that's another option. But the most common thing I see, honestly, is just people coming in as visitors and doing half and half between the States and Canada. Okay. Another good question is here. I think I missed a couple. No, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, this is a great question. How easy is it for a graduate master's F1 student in the States to permanently immigrate to Canada? So there is no direct route from you if you have an F1 in the States to become a PR in Canada, except for skilled worker. So if you have a US master's degree, and if you have any job experience, then potentially you can look at either federal skilled worker program or a PNP program if you have a job offer. So that's an option. And I would probably look at those two as your priorities. If you have a master's from the States, obviously you're well educated. You'll probably be a good candidate for either a job offer inside of Canada or for express entry skilled worker. Okay. All right, let's see. My common law partner is preparing the requirements for a study permit on August 2024 intake. When is the best time she can lodge her visa application? So I recommend submitting study permit applications anytime 4 to 6 months before your studies start. So it is definitely way too early now, and I wouldn't start until at least 2024. So let's say 6 months from August, I think you're looking at maybe February or March to submit your study permit. That's the best time to submit it. Another thing you can take a look at is whatever country you're from, you can check the processing times. And if it's, closer to 3 months, if it's closer to 6 months, If it's from the States, which is generally very, very fast, then you can always take a look at that too. But August 2024, you got loads of time. I wouldn't start until February, March of 2024. Okay. All right. Next is my fiance is Canadian and lives in Canada. I'm native from Cayman Islands. What steps do we need to take in order for me to live and work in Canada with him? I'm a holder of a British and UK passport. Can I visit him before we are married, and for how long? Good question. So the answer is yes, you can visit him because you can fly in on your UK passport. You need an ETA. And so essentially you apply for your ETA and you can visit him anytime for up to 6 months as a visitor. Now, what you can't do is visit him and show up at the airport and say, hey, I'm here, my fiance is Canadian, we're getting married, I'm going to stay here forever and ever. You can't do that. You will need to still show that you're going to be a visitor. But you can always say, you know, I'm here to get married to my partner, but I'm heading back to the UK, or I'm heading back to Cayman Islands, sorry. And essentially, you just need to prove that it's going to be a temporary stay. Now, what steps do you need to take in order for you to live and work in Canada with him? So what I recommend in this situation is, let's get it out of the way that you can absolutely visit your partner in Canada on your UK passport as a visitor, as long as you have an ETA. And then when you're in Canada, let's say you want to have your wedding in Canada, you get married there, or you get married in Cayman Islands. Probably going to be really nice if you do it there over Canada. So whatever you choose to do, as long as you get married, I recommend coming to Canada if that works for you, and submit an inside of Canada spousal sponsorship with an open work permit. So when you are inside of Canada, you can submit a spousal sponsorship with an open work permit, so long as you are inside of the country. You both have to be inside of the country. So that's a benefit. It's a small pilot program that's been going on for years and years and years. You can include a work permit with the sponsorship program, and that way you can work and be in valid status while you wait for the outcome of your PR application. It's going to be a good option for you, so I really recommend looking into it. Okay. Let me make sure everything's okay. Sorry, Richard, just in terms of conjugal relationship, feel free to give us a message and just we can chat about it, and I'll give you more information on it, because you're right to follow up on it. Is a little bit of a complicated procedure. Okay. I just want to read out Teresa's, it's not a question, but it is a question, but I just want to read it out because I just saw it. The IRCC minister, Sean Fraser, announced at the end of 2021 that family reunification was going to be ramped up over the next 3 years, and they're putting more funds into this program. It's still an incredibly long wait to bring a spouse to Canada. Do you know if 2023 will be faster? We applied July 15, 2022, still waiting to hear anything. Great question. I share that sentiment with you, that it's still incredibly long, but just keep in mind, when we talk about sponsorship, you got to talk about it from inside of Canada sponsorship or outside. Based off what you're saying, it seems like you have an outside of Canada sponsorship. The issue with it, when we talk about outside of Canada, it is consulate specific. So again, if your partner is living in Ghana, for example, those applications are being processed out of Accra, which is such a slow office. And this Minister of Immigration is trying to make ways to get the application sped up and get the backlog cleared. But at the end of the day, that specific consulate is struggling immensely. If you are in the States, if your partner's in the States, like I said, that consulate much, much faster. So it's difficult. They're putting in resources, but when it comes to anything outside of Canada, the resources are not as effective as the resources inside of Canada. So for example, if you have an inside of Canada sponsorship, normally it would have been 12 months. Now it's 6 to 8 months. So you can see and feel the effects of how they're putting in more effort, more funds into inside of Canada sponsorship. Outside of Canada, it seems like it's consulate specific. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. But Teresa, just for your mention, I don't know about the details of your case, of course, but if you submitted in July 15, 2022, you should expect it's called an AOR, which is your application number. You should expect that any day now. Once you get the application number, then you're looking at about 12 to 18 months of processing, again, depending on the consulate. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we have. Let's see. I'm 42. Okay, let's read this one. I'm 42. I've submitted my Express Entry profile with a CRS score of 396. I still have 18 years experience. Oh, this is the same project manager. Hello. I have 18 years experience as a project manager. It has been 8 months and I'm still waiting. Okay, so some advice for you. Again, I don't know your situation, so I'm going just kind of broadly. One is ensure that your IELTS score or CELTIP score is as high as it possibly can be. Number two is if you have federal skilled worker, is that's the program you're in, and your score is 396, it's going to be too low. You're going to have to fight to get it above 440 at least. So I would recommend looking into both increasing your language score. If you do speak French, even if it's not the best French, write a French test because Canada is prioritizing French language scores. So you can always take a look at that. And then you can always have English and French. And then a job offer, like I said, is going to be super, super helpful for you, particularly as a project manager. It's a managerial position. It's going to be a little bit easier than other skilled worker positions. So take a look at that. And it's going to give you an influx of points. If you had any family in Canada, make sure you included that who have PR or citizenship, because that's going to give you points. I'm trying to think what else you can potentially do. I think a job offer is just a great option for you. Again, you're 42, you're young, you're going to be able to get the managerial positions, hopefully inside of Canada. So maybe keep that as a priority. The last thing, which I had briefly mentioned, was the PNP option for Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Let's talk about that a little bit. I see a few people asking me to talk about PNP, which I can do. But remember, PNPs are just so different province to province. So everyone has a different requirement. But what I really want to talk about is Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So Saskatchewan and Manitoba are two of the more rural areas of Canada. They're two provinces that are heavy on agriculture, heavy on farming, but they do have a need for more PRs to be in their provinces. So if you don't have a job offer in Canada, then I recommend looking at a PNP program for Saskatchewan and Manitoba because you don't need a job offer. So that is the first ideal thing. The second thing is that their factor scores and CRS scores that they pull out of are much lower than federal skilled worker. So for example, the requirement is 60 or 61, which is the factor assessment points you need to reach, whereas federal skilled worker is 67. So just in general, it's not as competitive. The requirement for scores are lower. So take a look at Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Maybe see if you can put in a PNP for there. Okay. All right. Let me see. I know I missed a couple, so I'm so sorry. Well, we have 10 minutes. Let me jump into them. Okay, let me see. So, do we offer payment plans for our services? That's not an immigration question, but I'm still happy to answer it. Yes, but it depends. We're always happy to help clients, whatever we can do. So you can always just let us know, and we obviously want to do anything we can to help you out. So just ask. We'll see. Obviously everything's on a case by case basis, and don't hesitate to just reach out to us and ask if you have any questions like that, because there's no issue. I mean, we're able to always, chat with you, help you out, see what we can do. So don't hesitate to reach out. Someone asked if I can speak French. I can speak French, but I'm going to be doing this in English. So if you have any questions and you're looking for a lawyer who can speak French, I do speak French, and I'd be able to help you out with that as well. Okay. I know I missed a couple. Oh, this is a good question. This is from Justin. Can I accept a job offer while visiting Canada as a US citizen? At the moment, yes. There is a public policy in place that I mentioned happened during COVID, where if you're in Canada as a visitor, you have valid status, then you are eligible to obtain and switch your status from visitor to worker as long as you have a job offer. So if you get that job offer in place, you can switch your status from visitor to worker while you're inside of Canada. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Richard, another question. We submitted my TRV, I don't know if you're still here, but this was over half an hour ago. We submitted my partner's TRV over 6 months ago. Do you have any insight on the delays? What are the expected approval timeframes? Does it depend on the country you applied from? Absolutely. Everything you asked depends on the country you applied from. Some consulates have higher approval rates. Some consulates have longer processing times. So I think right now, when you go on Immigration Canada, you can essentially assume all the processing times are pointless. That's a reality of it. They're a little pointless. They change every day. They just are not followed by what people are really expecting. So honestly, as a whole, for TRVs, you can go anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. I had a TRV that got processed from the same office, both in 1 month and another in the same office in 4 months. There's nothing that is making it cohesive, unfortunately, right now. Why are there delays? Yeah, I mean, the reality of delays is that Immigration Canada and various consulates are affected like any other office would be when it comes to the social situation. I guess that's the best way to put it. So, for example, New Delhi's office is so backlogged because during COVID, there was a period that the COVID rates were really, really high in India, and a lot of things were shut down. So, as a result, the consulate was simultaneously shut down or struggling or short staffed. People were getting sick and things like that. So, that had put New Delhi, and what they're still suffering with is about a 6-month delay because they are still catching up on that. Colombo in Sri Lanka is another one we saw about 3 months ago. We were basically receiving nothing out of Colombo because the country was dealing with some difficulties. So another thing is the Philippines. In general, the Philippines is a really, really, really high volume consulate. So they are always a little bit slower. Similarly, Abu Dhabi, really high volume consulate because they take so many different countries' applications. So there are so many things that have an effect on it. Just keep in mind, IRCC offices, they're real people there. They're really just trying to operate like any other office. So they suffer the same things, you and I do as we're working in office-based jobs. So that's really the way to think about delays. Just humanize it a little bit because that's the reality of it. Now, tell me Richard, if you're still here, tell me what the country you applied from is, and I can give you a little bit of background. I don't know if you're still here. Let me see. Oh, Russia. Okay. Thank you. My partner submitted a TRV application in Russia. So, there you go. There are obviously scenarios that slow the situation down for anyone applying for Russia. So what you can do, Richard, just get in contact with us. I can help you a little bit more about that in terms of how you can essentially speed it up. But the reality is most Russian consulates are essentially shut down, not being processed. I think they're trying to move everything that was submitted to Moscow to a different office. Most likely Warsaw has absorbed it. But it's hard to say. We don't really have insight on it because it's a bit more federally confidential. Okay, but get in touch with us. We can help you with that. Okay. Ahmed, you said, please answer me. I will do my best. I can't necessarily find it. If you can just chat it again, I'll take a quick look. Okay. Okay. Next question. Is it faster for my fiance to get her passport in Ghana? I don't know if I understand this. Okay. Is it faster for my fiance to get her passport in Ghana than I can apply for temporary status here in Canada? Rob, can you retype it? I want to make sure I answer that question. I think I know what you're saying, but if you don't mind, Rob, just saying it one more time so I can answer that quickly. Theo, you said, can a person in Canada on a visitor's visa apply for a study permit from within Canada? It depends. I'm sorry I keep answering questions with it depends, but the reality is it really does depend. If you're Ghanaian and you're inside of Canada, and let's say you have a PR application in process, yes, no issue. You can apply for a study permit from inside of Canada. There's a multitude of different exceptions in which you can apply for a study permit from inside of Canada. And one of them would be if you had a PR application in process. So there are a few exceptions. It's really case by case specific. And I think there's about 10 in the immigration regulations that qualify as exceptions. Okay. However, in this scenario, someone's Ghanaian, but if someone is a US citizen or if someone is a UK citizen, what we have seen continuously is that, what we have seen continuously is that you can do what's called flag polling. So flag polling means that if you're a US citizen inside of Canada, you can apply for a study permit from inside of Canada, but you'd essentially need to flag poll, which means you're going to drive to the US-Canada border, essentially get your study permit from the Canadian Border Service when you just come back in. So you're like driving out and you're coming right back in. So that's possible. Okay. Okay, Rob, thank you so much for clarifying. I'm supposed to say, okay, is it faster for my fiance to get her passport in Ghana? Then I can apply for temporary status here in Canada when you're married. So passport timelines, I don't know. It really, I am not keeping track of that, to be honest with you, in terms of what's faster to do for passport renewals. But if you're talking about sponsorship, Rob, one option you can do, if you're not yet married, then there's two options. Either you can get married while you're both either not in Canada or just you are in Canada and your partner's outside in Ghana or anywhere else. So if you get married, then you can just apply for spousal sponsorship outside of Canada. If you want to get married inside of Canada, then apply for a TRV. And I could recommend, it depends on everyone's scenario, but let's say you could apply for something called dual intent, which I talked about earlier, which basically means you can apply for her visa and she would come to Canada and you could apply for sponsorship from inside of Canada. But let me know some details. Feel free to contact us and I can go through that in detail with you. Okay. Okay, I know there's a couple questions I didn't get to. I'm so sorry. I had a couple topics I was ready to talk about, but we didn't talk about any of them because there's a ton of questions. Hopefully we can do this again soon. We only have about a minute left before I'm going to stop this live. But as a kind of conclusive before you guys hop off, so I know, again, there's a lot of changes, a lot of confusion with immigration, especially out of Canada. So I really recommend you can go to our website, visaplace.com. You can send me an email directly if you want to, which is Nadia B, the letter B, like Bob, NADIA B @visaplace.com. And if you had any follow-up questions, we can set up a consultation and we can go from there. But if you're looking for something more, you don't really know where to start, like I said, go on visaplace.com. We have something. There's no commitment to anything. It's not a consultation. It's just a helpful guide for you, and we can help you that way. Otherwise, if you want to set up a proper consultation, you can go through our intake department. You can contact us. We are a firm out of Toronto, Ontario, with Canadian licensed lawyers, Canadian licensed consultants, legal assistants. We have a big team. We handle almost everything in areas of immigration. And we also, for the couple of people I saw there, if you have any US questions, we also have a US firm. Okay, last thing I want to say, someone was on this live asking about TN visas and I never got to it. So if that was you, just let me know because I want to help you and I'm so sorry. I feel like I didn't get to you. So all right, we're at the 1 hour mark. Thank you guys so much. I hope it helped even a slight bit, but anyway, get in contact with us. Let me know if you need anything. Oh, can someone type the email here? Okay, let me just repeat it because can I add a comment? Let's try. NadiaB@visaplace.com. That worked. Okay. All right, great. But otherwise, like I said, you can just contact our consultation, our intake, and you don't all have to, it doesn't have to be this email. It can be visaplace.com, and we'll guide you from there. Okay, so thank you guys so much. I hope it helped, and I will talk to you very soon. Thank you so much.